Hmm. This one no be small thing. Massive victory for Nnamdi Kanu and the Biafra at large. As US President pressured Tinubu for referendum and also for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. In this video, I would like you to watch the video to the end because this our man really explained a lot concerning this issue of Tinubu government and the imprisonment of Nnamdi Kanu and the main reason why Omotosho sentenced Nnamdi Kanu life in prison, because he really explained a lot of things. If you look very well, you will see since the Trump administration, Donald Trump came into power, they have been fighting the government left and right and then trying to put them at the main track. But they are afraid and they don't know what they are doing. And this issue of banditry, Boko Haram, terrorists everywhere in the country, in fact, it makes the country more shaking. And they don't know if Donald Trump is going to give order direct without any court proceeding. That is why they run and sentence Nnamdi Kanu. But as it is now, there's a lot of evidence that is coming up that even though the issue of sentencing him is not the whole case, because the whole case is now is that what is case the main law that the Motosho used to sentence him life imprisonment, all those things is what they are debating on, both nation, both international, and the government is finding it very difficult to answer. And this man really explained a lot of things here. So as you're about to watch, like, subscribe, and share the video to grants. Don't skip any part of it so that you will understand everything that is going on in this video.
For decades, Nigeria avoided the one word that terrified every ruler: referendum. Today that wall is finally cracking. From Gowon to Buhari, every government ran from self-determination debates. Now Tinubu is being cornered by a superpower. Nnamdi Kanu's voice was caged, silenced, and hunted, but history is spinning back toward him with unstoppable force. The United States didn't issue a request. They delivered an ultimatum. Tinubu built his power on silence and suppression, but this time, the pressure comes from someone he cannot threaten. For the first time in decades, an external force is challenging Nigeria's internal political red lines. A battle that started in the streets of the southeast has now reached the White House. Kanu has survived imprisonment, torture, betrayal, but this might be his first real political advantage. Tinubu thought he could bury the question forever. Instead, it's the question now burying his authority. When history knocks, rulers either answer or fall. Tinubu is standing at that door right now. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The call came through secure channels, the kind diplomats use when they mean business. Washington wasn't asking anymore. They were telling. The message landed on President Bola Tinubu's desk like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Engage with the self-determination question or watch Nigeria's relationship with the United States crumble in real time. No flowery diplomatic language. No room for negotiation. Just cold, calculated pressure from a nation that had propped up Nigerian democracy for decades. Tinubu stared at the document, his jaw tightening. Referendum. The word alone felt like treason in his mouth. For over 50 years, Nigeria's leaders had treated the Biafran question like forbidden fire, too dangerous to approach, too explosive to resolve. From the brutal civil war in 1967 to the targeted crackdowns of the 2000s, the pattern never changed. Silence dissent, jail the loudest voices, and hope time would erase a nation's trauma. Every president learned the unwritten rule: never acknowledge the wound, never validate the anger, never let the conversation begin. But Nnamdi Kanu had shattered that illusion. The man locked away in the State Security Service detention facility had done something no other agitator managed. He turned a regional grievance into a global movement. His voice, even from behind bars, echoed louder than most free men could ever dream. And now, impossibly, the United States was amplifying that echo into a roar. Tinubu could no longer ignore. Inside Aso Rock, panic spread like wildfire. Advisors scrambled to draft responses, each one weaker than the last. Military chiefs suggested intensified crackdowns. Political strategists recommended media campaigns to discredit Kanu further, but Tinubu knew the truth they were all avoiding. None of those tactics would work this time. The pressure wasn't coming from Enugu or Owerri or the streets of the southeast anymore. It was coming from Pennsylvania Avenue, and that changed everything. Nnamdi Kanu wasn't supposed to matter anymore. That was the plan. Arrest him, parade him as a terrorist, hold him indefinitely, let the world forget. It worked before with other dissidents. Loud voices reduced to whispers, movements dissolved into memory. But Kanu refused to disappear. Even in chains, even cut off from the world, his movement grew stronger, more organized, more dangerous to the narrative. Abuja desperately tried to maintain. The Southeast didn't forget him. They turned him into a martyr. Every Monday, businesses shut down in silent protest. His face appeared on murals across Igbo territories. Young people who barely remembered the Civil War now chanted his name with the fervor of believers. The government's strategy backfired spectacularly. The more they suppressed him, the more powerful he became. And international observers began asking uncomfortable questions. Why was Nigeria so afraid of one man? What was Tinubu hiding? Kanu's legal team, led by brilliant minds who understood global human rights law better than Abuja's prosecutors, had systematically dismantled every charge. Rendition from Kenya violated international law. The trial lacked due process. The entire case reeked of political persecution. Courts outside Nigeria saw it clearly. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights condemned his detention. Amnesty International called it unlawful. The United Nations raised red flags. But Tinubu ignored them all. He had inherited this mess from Buttori. Yes, but he owned it now. Instead of dialogue, he doubled down, extending detention, blocking media access, ensuring Kanu's voice stayed buried. While pretending to champion democracy abroad, Tinubu turned Kanu's case into a personal symbol of dominance. At home, it was a show of strength, he told himself. Proof that no one could challenge federal authority and win. Except now, the very global powers Tinubu sought validation from were pressuring him to do the one thing he refused: confront history. The United States' demand had tilted the balance overnight, exposing Tinubu's fear and giving Kanu a kind of leverage his movement had never enjoyed before. The era of silence was collapsing, right on Tinubu's watch. Washington's involvement didn't happen by accident. Behind the scenes, months of lobbying, pressure campaigns, and strategic meetings had built toward this moment. The Igbo diaspora in the United States, one of the most educated and economically powerful African communities in America, had mobilized like never before. They funded legal battles, organized congressional briefings, met with State Department officials, and refused to let Kanu's case fade into obscurity. American lawmakers started paying attention. Human rights became a bipartisan talking point. Senators demanded answers. Why was the U.S. maintaining close ties with a government that renditioned political opponents? Why was Nigeria violating its own constitution while claiming to be Africa's leading democracy? The questions piled up until they reached the desks of people who controlled aid packages, military cooperation agreements, and trade deals worth billions. Then came the leverage. The United States held cards. Nigeria desperately needed security assistance against Boko Haram, economic partnerships to stabilize the Naira, international legitimacy as Africa's most populous democracy. Tinubu had spent months courting American favor, positioning himself as a stable partner in a volatile region. He needed Washington far more than Washington needed him. So when the ultimatum arrived, it came wrapped in consequences Tinubu couldn't afford to ignore. Engage with self-determination dialogue, release Kanu under fair terms, or watch as Nigeria's most critical international relationships froze. No theatrics, no public drama, just quiet, suffocating pressure applied exactly where it hurt most. Tinubu's first instinct was rage. How dare they interfere in Nigeria's internal affairs? Who were they to dictate how a sovereign nation handled insurgents and separatists? He summoned his inner circle, pacing his office like a caged animal. But beneath the anger was something more dangerous: Fear. Fear that this pressure wouldn't stop. Fear that other nations might follow America's lead. Fear that his grip on power, built so carefully on suppressing dissent, was about to slip through his fingers. For the first time since taking office, Tinubu realized he was trapped. The walls he'd built to keep Kanu caged were now closing in on him. Tinubu's advisors split into warring factions overnight. The hardliners insisted defiance was the only option. Bowing to American pressure would make Nigeria look weak, encourage other separatist movements, and destroy Tinubu's credibility with the military and northern power brokers who put him in office. Give an inch on Biafra, they argued, and the entire federation collapses. Yoruba separatists would demand their own referendum. Niger Delta militants would resurrect their grievances. The country would fracture into chaos. But the pragmatists saw a different nightmare unfolding. Ignore Washington, and Nigeria becomes an international pariah. Foreign investment dries up. Security partnerships evaporate. The economy, already struggling under fuel subsidy removal and inflation, crashes completely. Tinubu's presidency becomes defined not by development or progress, but by the one crisis he refused to address. History would remember him as the leader too stubborn to evolve, too afraid to negotiate, too blind to see the trap closing around him. In the southeast, Kanu's supporters sensed the shift. Information leaked from Abuja, whispers of backroom debates, reports of American diplomats making explicit demands, rumors that Tinubu might actually be forced to negotiate. Hope, a commodity scarce in the region for decades, began to flicker back to life. Rallies grew larger. Social media exploded with speculation. For the first time since Kanu's arrest, his movement felt momentum on their side. Tinubu watched it all spiraling beyond his control. Every day he delayed responding to Washington. The pressure intensified. American officials made pointed public statements about human rights and political prisoners. Nigerian newspapers, some secretly funded by opposition figures who saw an opportunity, began running sympathetic pieces about Kanu's detention. International media picked up the story, framing it as a test of Tinubu's commitment to democracy. The president, who prided himself on political maneuvering, found himself with no good moves left. Resist and lose everything internationally. Negotiate and lose credibility domestically. Release Kanu and face accusations of weakness. Keep him detained and become the villain in a story the whole world was suddenly watching. Tinubu had run out of options, and everyone knew it. Behind closed doors at Aso Rock, the real battle began. Tinubu's cabinet turned into a war room where loyalty meant nothing and survival meant everything. The Minister of Defense argued for military solutions, deploy more troops to the southeast, crush any referendum talk before it spreads, show strength when the world expects surrender. The Attorney General countered with legal nightmares. International courts could sanction Nigeria, freeze assets, target officials with travel bans. The Foreign Affairs Minister painted the bleakest picture: lose America and China fills the vacuum with terms far less favorable. But it was the National Security Advisor who delivered the knockout blow. He laid intelligence reports across the table, evidence that the U.S. pressure campaign wasn't stopping. Congressional hearings were scheduled. Diaspora groups were coordinating with human rights organizations. Media investigations were underway into Nigeria's rendition practices. This wasn't a moment of diplomatic friction that would blow over. This was a sustained, organized assault on Nigeria's international standing, and Kanu's case was the weapon they'd chosen. Tinubu slammed his fist on the table. They want to destroy me over one man, one agitator who broke Nigerian law. The room fell silent, because everyone present understood what Tinubu refused to admit. This stopped being about one man years ago. Kanu was a symbol now, bigger than himself, representing decades of marginalization, broken promises, and violence the government pretended never happened. Arrest him, and 10 more rise to take his place. Kill the symbol and you create a legend. Outside government circles, Nigeria's civil society erupted into debate. Pro-democracy groups saw an opportunity to force genuine reform. Northern conservatives viewed American interference as neo-colonialism in disguise. Southern intellectuals argued both sides, recognizing the complexity but desperate for resolution. The country that had avoided this conversation for 50 years was now being forced into it by external pressure and internal exhaustion. Kanu, sitting in his cell, likely didn't know the full extent of the chaos his imprisonment had unleashed. But his lawyers did. They'd quietly been coordinating with international bodies, feeding information to US officials, building a legal and diplomatic case that had finally reached critical mass. They knew something Tinubu was only beginning to understand. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't violence or money or military might. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be forgotten. And Kanu had mastered that art perfectly. 3 weeks after the American ultimatum arrived, Tinubu called an emergency National Security Council meeting. No leaks, no press, just the inner circle and a decision that would define his presidency. The room buzzed with tension as he entered, his face revealing nothing. For days, speculation had consumed Abuja. Would he cave to US pressure or stand firm on principle? Would Kanu walk free or remain a political prisoner indefinitely? Tinubu began speaking, his voice measured but heavy with calculation. Gentlemen, we're not here to debate whether America has the right to pressure us. They do it because they can. We're here to decide how Nigeria survives what comes next. He paused, letting the weight settle. I've consulted with allies across West Africa, spoken to leaders who faced similar pressures, and the consensus is clear. We cannot afford isolation. Not now, not with our economy this fragile. The hardliners shifted uncomfortably. They'd expected a fight. But, Tinubu continued, raising a finger, we also cannot be seen as weak. So here's what will happen. We will announce a national dialogue on restructuring, not a referendum, not yet. We will release Kanu on strict conditions, monitored but free, and we will frame this as Nigeria choosing dialogue on our own terms, not bending to foreign demands. Silence. Then eruption. Half the room objected furiously. This was surrender disguised as strategy. The other half saw the genius give America what they want, without admitting they forced it. Tinubu silenced them with a look. Kanu gets his freedom, but not his victory. We control the narrative. We set the terms. And if he violates conditions, we act swiftly and with full international understanding. This is chess, not combat. In Washington, news of Nigeria's decision was received with quiet satisfaction. Diplomats knew exactly what happened, but would never say it publicly. They'd won. The pressure worked. In the southeast, joy erupted when word leaked. Kanu might finally come home, but celebration mixed with caution. They'd been betrayed before. Promises meant nothing until Kanu stood free, unharmed, and able to speak truth without chains. And in his cell, when guards finally told him the news, Kanu smiled, not with relief, but with knowing. He'd outlasted them, survived what they thought would break him, and emerged, not as a defeated prisoner, but as the man who forced Nigeria's most powerful president to blink.
Oh yes, that is it. The roles of Nnamdi Kanu in this country, in the Nigerian system, it is affecting them both here and now. It's affecting them, and that is why they know the problem of this country. They know that Mazi is not the problem. Simon Ekpa is not the problem. The problem lies within the government and within the system. Those people that is operating the government and those people that they claim that they are chasing. Even those so-called terrorists, bandits, Boko Haram, Fulani men or Fulani killers, all of them, they are part of the government and they know what they are doing. So they see Mazam Kano as an obstacle to them. That what they want to do, they will not carry it the way they want to do it. That is why they find it every means to make sure that they prison him. But this time around, we believe that Donald Trump move is going to change everything concerning Nigeria, because this issue of Donald Trump coming to the country, it is in fact it is shaking them. Everybody is boiling. The government, they are boiling. They don't know what they are doing and they don't know what to say. But we are hoping that they will come. This issue of scaring people everywhere, it will stop, because the country is not safe for anybody anymore. And it's not safe. They can use millions of naira to go and kidnap Mazam Kano from Kenya, and also to chase to fight against Simon Ekpa. But this one that is within us here, that is within the country, that is everybody seeing, but they cannot fight them, they cannot defeat them. It is somehow laughable once people talk about the things happening. The government, they will be looking you as somebody that wants to come and destroy their government. Why the government they have already destroyed already? So we are hoping for the Donald Trump to come and rescue the country and rescue the whole nation, because that is what everybody is expecting for now. The kind of killing and the buying and the kidnapping, the way it is going everywhere, it is very, very shocking. Well, my people, I would like to hear your comment down below. Like, subscribe, and share the video to go and let others see things going on in the country. And thank you for watching.